Chris Holt here with Novark, and very appreciative of Anthony Moscardelli from Pruitt for joining us today on our Fireside Chat for all things kind of welding related, and obviously touching on Novark and our SWR. Anthony and Pruitt, the company out of South Central Illinois, has been with Novark for going on maybe 6 or 7 months now since their installation. They acquired it earlier in 2024. Anthony, thank you so much for joining us and chatting about your experience so far. I will let you introduce yourself and your background, and tell us who you are.
All right. So my name's Tony Moscardelli. I'm with Pruitt. I've been with Pruitt since 2018. I've been a pipe fitter and welder for about 25 years now. Did everything from work in fab shops, large industrial, processing plants, refineries, food processing plants, power plants, nuclear, you name it. We here at pretty much most of our work is centered around heating and cooling, chilled water, heating water, that kind of thing. But we're looking to expand beyond there, start going after some more work in the heavier industrial environment, bigger pipe, heavier pipe, that kind of stuff. So that's kind of what led us down the path we're heading down now, that, and prefabrication has taken, pretty big hold in the industry, that with the lack of skilled manpower, just a lot of things, kind of lead up to where we're at now, and kind of how we've gotten to this point.
Yeah. For some people who might not, be so ingrained in the industry and might be watching this, what are some of the main benefits to moving a lot of work into that prefab, taking maybe work from the outside, bringing it inside as much as you can? What are some of those benefits that a company might see, or that a project would see in doing something like that?
Well, it's huge, just from the safety aspect, less man hours on a job site. There's less chance of, a guy tripping over rebar and landing on it, climbing up and down ladders gets reduced, being up in a pipe rack, is reduced. There's a lot of, just from a safety aspect, the less time you spend on the job site, the less likely you are to have a job site accident, and then, by doing the work in a shop, you're, the same work that you'd be doing off of a ladder or out of a lift or up in a pipe rack is being done at chest level or, waist level, in jigs and stands. And it's a much more controlled environment. It's got a lot more predictability, just material handling, moving pipe around, where you have overhead cranes and, things of that nature, rather than, trying to actually use a small crane, or, guys risking picking up more weight than they should be picking up, and picking pipe up, even small pipe, 4-inch pipe, is just what it requires from a person to pick up. They're bending over, they're twisting their backs, they're straining their shoulders. It just puts everything at such an easier, in such a position that you can work on it much easier.
Would you say from a standpoint of your customers, can they expect maybe, more consistent quality from work done inside versus stuff that's done out there in the field too?
Oh yeah, for sure. Not to mention, you have, in the shop, we try to keep the same individuals in the shop at all times. You have a core group that pretty much stays there. And you may have an influx of workers if you have a heavy load you need extra help on, but by having that core group, they can each one of those guys can oversee the guys that are coming in and make sure they're doing things the way that it's expected to be done,
Yeah.
And the same thing is true, at the end of the line, when you're bringing in things from one end of the building all the way to the other, and at the end of there, everything goes through a quality control process. Everything's being tested, everything's being inspected. You're not typically going to get that on the job site. That's not going to happen on most job sites. They're going to assemble a large amount of piping, and then that large amount of piping eventually will get tested, but it's, having it go out already tested and being installed, and then that test not needing to be done on the job site, you already know that nothing's going to leak. As far as welds go, you might still, once you bolt everything together and have flange connections and things like that, there's that, but for the most part, all of your risk is done in the shop.
Yeah. I think that's been a common theme, at least in the last 18 months, in conversations I've had, not only with yourselves about moving into a more sort of prefab heavy situation. I think there's a lot of other companies that are also considering making that move, or in the process of making that move, whether that means they have to, build a new building to accommodate, a lot more indoor work or whatever you want to call it. That kind of brings me to when you guys were evaluating Novark and putting the SWR in the shop. That wasn't the only thing you were evaluating. You needed to think about your space, and I had the privilege of coming to your shop. But there was a new building going up. There was an existing building that you were considering cleaning out and using that for the space. So what were some of the other things that you were looking at from a real estate perspective when you were making that transition, and when you were evaluating Novark and taking those big steps to get that profiler and get, obviously an automated welding machine?
Sure. It was definitely a commitment on our part. We kind of put the cart before the horse, so to speak. We kind of knew this is the route we wanted to go. We were committed to making that happen. Strategically, we had to figure out where we were going to do it at. We didn't have really, as you said, we had a new building that was okay. It certainly wasn't perfect, and then we had some existing real estate that, we thought, well, maybe we can make this work. And then we went out searching for real estate that'd be something close to our existing shop. And just, everywhere we looked and turned, we hit a wall, with whether it be, the cost.
Sometimes literally.
Yeah. I mean, the cost of building something today is just astronomical. And, then to add to that, there's a lot of power needed for this equipment, for a shop. And, just it's hundreds of thousands of dollars just to install the power. And even that, we had that same issue with the existing building at our, the newer building we had at our shop. We were still looking at a couple $100,000 just to get power to that building. And then it still was not perfect for what we needed, so it eventually came together. We found a great property. It's not super close. It's about 30 miles from our shop, but the scale of work we're trying to achieve, at the end of the day, you're going to be shipping everything anyhow. So, in reality, I mean, the shop could be in Texas, Utah, you name it. I mean, it makes no difference. If at the end of the day, your goal is to get on some, mass level of pipe fabrication or production, then, I mean, you could set up anywhere,
Yeah.
So that's kind of what brought us to where we're at today. So we ended up with 55,000 square foot of space, which is amazing. And, the building we have is, it already had the power we needed, and it already had a couple overhead cranes, and, it just fell right into place. And, we're excited about it. We're ready to get it up and running. We've had a few delays and setbacks, but I think at the end of the day, it's going to be perfect for us.
So you guys did end up going with that auxiliary, offsite building to do.
We did, yeah.
Can't wait to come and see that, because I know, man, we walked around that shop and got a good workout walking around there. And you weren't quite as far ahead as some of the other customers with some of the pre-installation things that needed to be addressed. So I'm glad you guys found that space. And I find that everybody who is implementing this, it seems to be one of the more common conversation pieces I have now is acquiring or building new spaces. I think everyone's jumping on this train of doing the work in-house as much as they can.
Yeah. And, for me, the most important thing for me was, when you're investing your time and your effort and your money in an operation such as this, you really have to make sure you're going to be able to achieve the right flow to get the advantage that you can get out of it. I have had the opportunity to go to some other shops and see their operations, and I've been to a shop that even has a Novark and it's very unfortunate. I was glad to see it because number one, they're close to where we are. They're not necessarily they're larger than we are, so we're not really necessarily a competitor, so to speak. But by being able to go there, see how their shop's set up, and then realize that, hey, I think we're on a better track than even they are. It was a little relieving, you know what I'm saying? It gave me some relief and, settled a lot of my fears that I had, and at the end of the day, it's, if we can't make it work, it's because we're not doing something right. We are definitely set up to be successful right now, I think. So I'm looking forward to, being in full production. We really haven't had that opportunity yet to get like a mass workflow started, but we have been able to use it in production, and we've definitely seen some progress, and I think we're going to be in good shape.
So let's touch in on that. It's a good segue into the flow that you guys ultimately kind of settled on for that space. And I know when we were going through our process with the SWR, we were also looking at the other kind of essential tools to get that advantage, like having a nice profiler to take care of the cutting and beveling work and all that kind of stuff. So why don't you walk us through a little bit on sort of how your shop flows from kind of station to station, and sort of how you landed on that design.
So again, we were fortunate to be able to find the shop that we found had a very long building that is also pretty wide. So it's our main shop where the SWR and everything set up is 100 by 250.
So is it a linear flow? Like you're going straight in one door, straight out the other. You're not like doing a horseshoe or anything like that. You're going right straight through.
Right in one door and out the other, and it's that was my main concern, is making sure that we start at one end of the building and we go out the other end of the building. I had looked at, again, on some of the smaller spaces we had, we kind of talked about coming in and making a U shape out the building, or kind of coming in and going in an L shape out the building. It makes absolutely no sense to me to turn around. I mean, I don't want any backtracking,
Yeah.
So we really sat down for a long time and just perfected that flow, so basically we come in one end of the building, we have the feed bed and the in-feed conveyor and everything for the profiler is outside, so your pipe is outside right beside the feed bed, so everything gets loaded right there, goes to the conveyor and moves through an automated door into the shop where it goes to the profiler, and that's kind of like stop one, directly across from that, in the other, I'm calling them two bays. You basically have two bays that are 50 by 250.
Okay.
On the other bay, its first kind of station is fitting prep, so that's where, fittings are getting cleaned, prepped, staged, and then your pipe and your fittings are getting married. And then they go to various tacking stations. We have 3 of them set up right now where, there's 3 crews of guys set up to be tacking. And then it goes straight from there to the SWR. If the only reason nothing would go straight from there to the SWR would be if it strictly has to be hand welded because of it's something to do with the position of it or the layout of it or something like that. But the goal is that at least 80% of everything we do hits that SWR,
Right. And you guys have a 3 positioner set up on that SWR, correct?
We do. We have 3.
So when it comes to that tacking station, and I'm really happy that you brought that up, and I think you're on a great track there. And maybe that was one of the things you picked up from walking some of the other shops that have SWRs is you have 3 positioners for the SWR, and you also have a corresponding 3 tacking stations, right?
Correct.
So I think that in my experience being here, a couple of years now and walking a lot of shops is a great way to, and one of the common things that comes up in a discussion about the SWR is how do we keep it fed? And I think that having a tacking station dedicated to a positioner, you know what I mean? Like that 1-to-1 ratio should give you the time to always have something ready to go. As opposed to having 2 tacking stations try to keep up with 4 positioners or whatever. That's where people start to get in a situation where they're waiting, their operators are waiting for pipe, and ultimately you're losing money. So I'm really happy that you guys are on that 1-to-1 ratio, and I'm keen to learn how those guys that are doing the tacking are going to be able to keep up and keep it fed. I'm very excited to hear what that relationship is like, because that's the advice that I've been giving probably in the last 6 months or so is, I think when it comes to that tacking, if you want to alleviate that concern, having a team dedicated to however number of positioners you have should be a good starting point to make sure that pipe's going through there all day. Yeah.
And, those were some of the horror stories that kind of drove me to that decision. I've was at one shop and, their guys spend Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday just tacking things together because they can't in the course of a day keep it running. So they're spending days just getting things tacked together. And then they have a couple operators on Thursdays and Fridays running the SWR to keep up. But it's like, there's so much more that could be happening. It's
right. When you have a tool like, like Novark in there, I think, and you'll probably be able to attest to this, once you have it in there, the ceiling for growth now that you have is high. And the people that will say, like the story you just told about, you're tacking Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and you're just welding out Thursday, Friday, because it is fast enough to burn through all that in just a couple of days. The constant evaluation that'll be, kind of necessary in order to keep getting efficient, but at the same time, the peace of mind of the investment you've made, that you do have that ceiling to keep growing and keep improving, really as far as your mind can handle. I think that's a great a great piece of Novark and why it's sort of become the Cadillac of this industry, because those gains in that ceiling is so high. And I laugh all the time because, like you said, one of the horror stories, or one of the things that come up the most is, I can't even keep this fed. And I said, well, that seems like, to me, the greatest problem you could ever possibly have, because it's so much more work you could do if you added a couple personnel here or whatever. You're not even close to reaching the capacity of what could be done now. And so, yeah, that's an interesting anecdote there. So you guys go from the tacking, and then you're into Novark, and where do we go from there?
So once it leaves, the SWR, we have another 3 stations past that where, your piece A gets married to piece B, say for instance, any position welds that have to be done, OLEDs that have to be welded out, final assembly kind of area, that's where that happens. And then, it moves from there into, pressure testing, hydro, QC, that kind of thing. And then right out the front door of the building, so that's the basic flow for that side of the shop. I'm saying that side of the shop because, we have a whole nother side of the shop still. We're still, doing work in also, so that's, right from where the fittings get prepped and everything. Just beyond that, we have our CNC table for anything like, plate that has to be processed, and it's getting taken care of. And then, from there, there's, racks being built, and, structural steel, whatever other kind of items we're doing, can be achieved on that other side of the shop. So you basically have two lines, assembly lines, if you will, being processed, through that shop. And, my hope is that, I'm already looking, a couple years down the road. I mean, I hope we're successful enough. We're looking at buying another one, to be honest with you.
Hey, don't get me too excited, Tony. Hey, don't.
Yeah, right.
Listen, let's say, hey, I got you when you're ready, but come on now. Now so you mentioned kind of when we started this, your bread and butter at Pruitt would have been, that heating and the cooling, the chilled water, that kind of stuff. Right. And now you're looking into more of that industrial development side of work. Is that a decision you guys made based on what you're seeing in the market, based on what you're seeing regionally? What was the big driver in branching out into some of these other industries for you guys at Pruitt?
Well, so we have always been capable, of that type of work. It's just not something we've ever really strived for. We were kind of comfortable just doing the same thing. I mean, it's what we know. It's what we're good at. It's what our estimators are comfortable working with. We did not have for a long time. We really haven't had people that have a background in a heavier, industrial construction type setting. So with my background being in that's kind of it's an outlet that we need to explore. We want to grow as a company. So what you do is you just sit back and you look at, where are these potential growth areas, and that's an area we don't dive into very often, and some of that, is just based on in this area that we work in. We're a union contractor, and we have a lot of industrial work that has been done for years by non-union contractors, but they are they get a lower scale. They're harder to compete with because of that, just that kind of thing. Well, this kind of gives us that upper hand a little bit. You know what I'm saying? We can target those areas a little bit more confidently now because we know we can cover that work.
Yeah.
You know, in the manpower that we can get through the union allows us to be able to cover that work a lot better. You know, so that's our main driving point, is just basically, you know, looking at, you know, we want to grow, and how do you do it? So that's kind of where you get into the, you know, you just evaluate your situation and where you're at and where you want to be. And that's what has kind of created us this ability to make these moves and you know, take this jump, you know, and you know, we're not even looking, you know, we're looking outside of our own area, you know, because, you know, when you're trying to feed a piece of equipment like that, and you have that capability of doing so much more work in a day's time, that gives you that ability to look for more work, right?
Right.
So it's kind of that twofold thing, you know. Yeah, we put the cart before the horse, but it's definitely
you need to equip yourself. You know, you need to equip yourself. You can't go to the gunfight holding a knife. You know, you got to get the gun before you walk in, for sure.
Yeah.
You touched on the fact that you guys are a union shop. How has been the reception from your guys on the floor regarding having Novark come in? Was it a tough conversation to have with them? Did you have guys that were excited to be part of that? How did that go?
So, not at all. You know, I think, you know, just based off of, you know, research that I've done, the conversations I've had with you and the guys at Novark, you know, I spent a lot of time, you know, I'm a union member myself. That's where I came from. Even though I'm, you know, an office manager, I still, you know, am a part of the union. I'm an officer at our local, as a matter of fact. And, you know, I've had a lot of conversations with our international rep, with our business manager, our business agent, and I included the guys all the way through this. You know, I mean, I was very particular about making sure we got the right people, guys that were excited about it, guys that wanted to be a part of it. And I didn't, you know, I never took the route of, hey, you know, we're starting this shop, you know, send me 5 guys, you know, because that I don't think is a good recipe for success, because you do have, in this industry, there are, you know, there are people that are not so excited about automation.
Right.
And you know, a lot of times you might have somebody that feels actually intimidated, like you're trying to take a work from them, you know. But here's the thing: at the end of the day, you know, we had in our little shop at our main office, you know, I mean, we had 4 guys in there, you know, 2 guys regularly, 4 guys, maybe 6 guys was a lot of people in there. You know, we're running with a crew of 8 people here right now, you know, and it's like, I'm not taking jobs, we're creating jobs. You know, I mean, we're giving more people a place to work that they know where they're going every day. They're not in the rain, they're not in the cold. You know, they're working in pretty good conditions. You know what I'm saying? I think it's a good thing myself, you know, and I think it actually creates work. But again, I think you really have to, if you're considering this, I really think you have to make sure. I think you need to include the people in your conversations. You know, I mean, I've been to at least one shop that I feel like, you know, the management was just like, hey, this is what we're doing. And they just bought it. They put it in the shop and nobody wanted the thing. And it just sat there for like months. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, they had to make a lot of adjustments as time went on, you know, and I think, you know, I think starting from the first day, knowing that everybody's excited, you know, about it, and is the way to go for sure. And I think our guys are embracing it. They're excited about it. They love it.
Mm-hmm. And I think, when we very first started talking, I think it's something that I like to stress, that it's, make sure that you do involve those people, get them in early, have the conversations with them, get the pulse, because as we all know, man, you welders, you put something out there in the shop that they don't, maybe like you said, an owner drops it on them and says, guess what? This is what you guys can bury that shit 6 feet under if you want to,
right.
And so,
and I honestly think, it makes the welders, I think it actually helps teach them. I think it hones in on their skill a little bit. These guys typically, especially in our area, a lot of stick welding. There's not a lot of wire process being done. Even in our old shop, we were pretty big on the Miller Pipe Works and, the RMD and, there's a lot of technical knowledge. There's a lot of knowledge. It's not just as simple as saying, hey, here, go pull this trigger and, do this. You have to really understand a lot of the principles behind that, and I think by being able to see what's happening on the monitor, it's such a nice high definition video,
like a vantage point that you don't get normally.
Yeah, you can see things in so much more detail than they would, and it's not really slowed down for them, but they can take time to actually watch the shape of the cone. They can see a change in the arc length, and being able to put understanding to that terminology, I think actually makes them better welders, if not at least a more knowledgeable welder. So that's the other thing, I think that they are enjoying with it. They're actually learning some things that they wouldn't have otherwise known already.
Yeah, it's very valuable to have that, and to even have the video of all the welds that you make, and to be able to recall that almost like a sports team. You can watch film, or you can help train new operators or young guys that come in. Even if they're hand welding, you can show them a video on the SWR of like, look, this is what's happening while you're manually welding that you can't see. Right. So this is what we're going for, and that kind of thing. So it's such a unique piece, and I'm really happy that you touched on, kind of debunking some of the myths that automation, at least from a Novark perspective, takes jobs away from people. I stood in an elevator one day with someone, and I said, are you guys doing welding? And he just saw my shirt and he said, man, I can't take the work away from my guys. And I go, oh man, have you got that backwards, man? Because most of the people like you guys have implemented this. They have that, that dramatic added capacity in their shop to take on 2, 3, 4, 5 more jobs a year. That's going to obviously, help their bottom line, from a revenue standpoint. But man, you need people. There's no shortage of welding to do, right? You need the people. So I do find that everywhere we are, it's very common that you've had to actually add people, but at the same time, you're getting a massive production gain out of the people that you have.
Sure. Yeah.
And what a cool aspect to talk about the learning and education piece that they get from having access to a tool like that. And I hope, and I'm starting to have some of these conversations, and as you can imagine, initially it was an uphill battle, but at some of those union schools where kids are coming in, and it's hard enough to get the youth to get into the trades and to do this kind of work. But, having something like Novark in a union school, teaching them on these kind of tools that they're going to ultimately interact with, whether you're a Novark, part of the Novark family, or you're part of a different group, this kind of technology is really quickly becoming ingrained in these shops. So, more conversations I absolutely want to have with the union pieces, and starting to educate the young welders of tomorrow earlier on this kind of technology and making sure that they're staying up on all of that as well, whilst doing the hand welding. And I'm a shit welder. I can't do nothing.
Well, and it's again, it's not like, I mean, that has not gone away.
Right. It ain't going away either.
Need that, for a long time. I'd say we're going to need that. This to me is just like, it's making one step easier. It's making it a faster process. You're still welding in the shop. You still are going to have to weld your OLEDs. You're still going to have to make your position welds. There's still, you're not trying to take away skill.
No.
And as I said, I think it's actually, at least from a wire welding standpoint, I think it's actually increasing the welder's knowledge, giving them a better understanding of what they should be doing when they're hand welding it. It's actually made our guys more comfortable with wire welding. So I mean, it's I don't, as of right now, I don't see any negative aspect that I've witnessed, and I don't think that I will either. I'm pretty confident we're on the right path, and I think we're going to be successful with it.
I got two final questions for you before we let you go, and thank you for taking the time to do this with us. For you, and John and Courtney and everybody that was in the office that we interacted with, and everyone in the team, what would be a piece of advice that you have to somebody just beginning the journey with us, or just beginning the journey in evaluating this kind of technology in the shop? What would be a piece of advice that you would give them?
My biggest piece of advice would be, don't try to undertake a business decision like this. Don't try to be cheap about it. Have a budget in mind, but if your budget ain't quite there, give it a little time till you can be there. I would absolutely hate the idea of having this available to me and not being able to use it to its full potential. And that's been my driving point this whole way. That's why we took a lot of risk in if we would not have found the shop that we found, we would have probably put off the installation. We would have still stayed committed, but we would have put it off until we found that place that had the right flow for us. I would definitely not recommend anybody take this on without being committed to making it work.
If you're going to do it right, and do it right out of the gate. Then you avoid throwing good money after bad. That's for sure.
That's right. Yeah.
And then lastly, for your whole office there, what are you most excited about in the next 2 years?
Well, I'm super excited to see this new shop. We're not 100% at capacity yet. I think we're probably, we're going to be we're going to be hitting spring probably before we're like 100% set where we want to be. The shop is exactly how I envision it and fully functioning the way that I want it to function. And then once I think we hit our stride, I think it's going to explode very rapidly. I would say once we get rolling, I'm excited to see how much work we're really going to be doing in the next couple of years.
Yeah. Well, you and me both. Thank you so much, Tony, for taking time. As one hockey guy to another hockey guy, great to talk to you. And thanks for doing it. And I'll be seeing you at your shop again soon. I got to go see this new satellite office that you got. So
yeah, that's cool.
Get up there. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks a lot.